Welcome to Ken's Corner Podcast, Season 2. It's time. Are you ready? Now here we go with your host, Ken Judge.
Hey everyone, today on Ken's Corner, I have my special guest and my first former NHL hockey player, Paul Lawless. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, Ken, I'm doing great. I'm doing just wonderful. I'm doing better than the weather outside. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it is a bit of a stormy weather out there, but we're going to persevere. It is April, and we'll get into some good weather coming up
Let
soon.
me just put it this way. I miss Arizona right now.
I guess you do.
I'm in Toronto. I'm in Toronto right now. I've been out in Arizona for, the last 20 years. So the winters have been a little bit different than what I'm used to. Let's put it this way. But it's okay.
And what brings you back to the city of Toronto?
Well, my mother, she's 91 now. And so I'm spending more time on the East Coast because of the, obviously she's getting a little older, to put it mildly. But yeah, so I'm back here spending a lot more time with my mother. And it is what it is. But I don't think I think next winter, I had a taste of the Canadian winter again. And I'm like, I think I've had enough. I'm going back either down to Florida or somewhere a little bit warmer, but enough of my bellyache. And it's great to be with my mother. She's been great to me for all the years and provided a hell of a life for me. So I'm very grateful, and it's payback time. So here we are.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
You are from Scarborough, born and raised from Scarborough, Ontario.
Yes.
Just get a little bit of insight into who Paul Lawless is. You played in the juniors, played for Windsor Spitfires.
Right.
We're going to start there. Let's talk about your junior days. And eventually you got drafted 14th overall to the Hartford Whalers. Let's talk about that a little bit, Paul.
Well, let's go back to the junior days. I mean, I was just, playing hockey in Toronto. And next thing you know, I was drafted first round, 7th overall. I come home and I'm like, holy crap, man, I'm going to Windsor, the Windsor Spitfires. And anyway, here I am in the junior hockey leagues, and it was listen, a lot of guys get homesick. I was like, I couldn't wait to get, to experiment with, a different city and the start of my career, really. And it was great. And then, from Windsor, I went right to the Hartford Whalers. Yeah.
14th overall draft choice.
Yeah.
What was it like having your name called that day?
Well, it was great. We went to Rick Kern was my agent at the time, Bill Waters. We'll get into that later. But Ricky and I believe I want to say it was Phil Housley and maybe one of the Hunter sisters. We took the train from Toronto to Montreal. The draft was in the Forum. And so Rick had mentioned to me that maybe, first round, late in the first round, or very early in the second. I'm saying, perfect, no problem, whatever. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden the Hartford Whalers come up, and they called my name. I'm like, holy criminy, what do I do now? But this is where it gets good. So I go down there, they put the jersey on, blah, 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 great. Well, my first interview was Dick Irvin. So he's got a live, and it's going back to Hartford. So anyway, Dick Irvin is, I'm sitting there in awe. I mean, here's Dick Irvin. I mean, my whole life, that's all I've seen with, Montreal, Toronto, Dick Irvin, and Danny Gallivan, and all these other, great, sportscasters. But anyway, so Dick Irvin, Dick, he said to me, he goes, Paul, do you even know what state Hartford's in? And I'm like, I pulled it out of where. I said, Connecticut? And I'm like, I'm on live friggin' radio, right? I'm like, are you gotta be kidding me? He puts me on the spot my first interview. So I learned right away. He said, be prepared for anything. Yeah. And anyway, the rest is history after that. But it was a lot of fun. And then it was a start of a crazy, crazy fun career. I can assure you that.
How many years did you spend in Hartford, sir?
Well, I was in Hartford. Well, I went. This is an interesting story. So I was chosen when I was, my draft year. I was chosen to play for Team Canada Juniors, and we were playing in Leningrad at the time. Dave King was the coach, and so that summer we went out and we all, tried out for the Team Canada junior team, and I ended up being one of the guys that was picked. So anyway, I'm now back in Windsor, and anyway, I'm all fired up. I got my passport. We're going to Leningrad, the whole deal. So anyway, I get a phone call, and when I say Rick Kern is one of my very great friends. He's a class act from the get go. But anyway, Rick worked for Bill Waters. And anyway, so Bill Waters, fast talking Bill. So I get a phone call, and it's Bill Waters. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? So anyway, he goes, you're going up. I said, yeah, I'm going to play in Team Canada juniors. He goes, no, you're not. You're going up to play for the Whalers. I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, I don't want to play for the Whalers right now. I want to go play for Team Canada. He goes, no, they own your rights. You're going up. Well, that was the start of the Hartford Whaler experience. Oh my goodness. But I was really peed off that Bill, didn't say, hey, let the guy go play, represent his country, and then bring him up, because we were the bad news bears of hockey, the Hartford Whalers. My God, I got to the NHL, and I probably was probably the first guy I ever played in the game that was really pissed off when he got to the NHL, because I had that, I wanted to play for Team Canada. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And then anyway, so the good news is I got to skate with Gordie Howe every day, and got to know the whole Howe family, and met some great guys that I'm still in touch with. So, it's just a shame that, back then they had so much power over you. We were just not so much today, but it was a little bit disturbing at the time. But anyway, we made the best of it. So that was my initiation into the NHL. Yeah. So,
actually, I want to speak about something you've done against my favorite team, the Toronto Maple Leafs. You're still the points record for a single point in 6 points in one game, and it happened right in Toronto, I guess, in front of your family and friends.
It happened in Hartford.
Oh, it happened in Hartford.
In Hartford against the Leafs, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, it was interesting because I lost my father when I was 13 years old, and his anniversary of his death is January 4th. But you got to remember, so the night before, the Leafs were in town, and we went out, because there was Gary and Borey and all these guys. I've known them all because in the summer hockey we play, and and I just known them over the years. But anyway, so that next day was January 4th. And I had to tell you what, man, I'm not into that, hocus pocus stuff, but something happened that night, and I had something in me, and it was crazy. And I ended up getting 6 points that night. It was against the Leafs, the anniversary of my father's death, and it was one of the great highlights of my career. Yeah, against Toronto, which was even better because I know all those guys.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's a great story. Thank you for correcting me. It was happened in Hartford.
It happened in Hartford. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No, I kind of want to take you through a trip through your NHL teams.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hartford, we spoke about. Philadelphia, brief stop in Philly. Vancouver, and of course Toronto.
Short stops in all those three, but I'll tell you, it was interesting because when I was in Hartford, Kevin Dineen had an attorney. Well, I was no longer with Bill Waters and Ricky Kern. So anyway, I was hunting for a new agent. So Brian Burke's name came up, and Brian was at that point, he was representing on our team Kevin Dineen. And anyway, so I was talking to Kevin. I said, hey, listen, why don't you give Brian Burke a call and see if he would represent me? And sure enough, he did. And I got on the phone with Brian, and anyway, he said, listen, I'm not taking any more players, but you know what, Lolly, I'll take you. Perfect. Okay. And anyway, so we had some great runs in Hartford. We lost in the, I think it was the semifinals. Claude Lemieux scored the goal in overtime and knocked us out. We had a big, huge parade downtown. But after that, Emile Francis started disassembling the team. And the organization was, in disarray. And I was trying to figure it all out. And anyway, so Brian Burke called me up and said, hey, listen, would you be interested in entertaining a trade? I said, well, yeah, sure. I mean, because at the time, there's a lot of turmoil going on in Hartford. And I said, sure. So anyway, I got another phone call, and he said, you've been traded to Philly. I said, great, because, I knew Derek Smith very well. I knew the great Peter Zezel, God rest his soul, and Ricky Tocchet, that we all played together growing up in Scarborough. And so it was a nice fit for me. And anyway, so I get to Philadelphia. We were playing the Bruins, and so I drove from Hartford to Boston because it's only 2 hours down the road. And they put me in the lineup that night. But before that, this is the thing. But before that, I actually stepped on the ice. I met Mike Keenan at the hotel, and I knew a little bit about Mike. And anyway, so I get out of the car, I go to the hotel. He's under this name, not Mike Keenan, because so many people would harass him, right? Like a movie star. But anyway, so I get up on this room and I walk in and I have this big blue trench coat on. I've got the Joe Dirt mullet going, the whole bit. Anyway, I sit down with Mike and we start shooting the breeze. So, and Mike says, okay, well, welcome to Philly. And I said, oh, thanks very much, Mike. This is great. I'm really looking forward to being, part of it, growing with the team. And Mike says to me, he goes, well, is there anything you'd like to know about me? I said, no, not really. I think I pretty much have you, whatever. So anyway, as I left that room, okay, Homer came in and he goes, I can't stand that guy. That's what Keenan said about me. So anyway, as it turns out, Paul Homer comes back out. He goes, he hates you. I said, oh, that's nice. That's a nice first impression. Anyway, the whole point of the story is now we call it Flyerized, and through Mike Keenan, and he put me through hell. I mean, I was in the gym with Pat Croce. I don't know if you know that name, but anyway, he ended up owning the 76ers. And I think part of the Flyers at the time. But anyway, he owned these fitness rehabilitation place. So anyway, he grabbed me and I was on the butt. They had me in the best shape of my life. And Keenan just, had didn't want nothing to do with me. And I said, okay, fine. I'll earn my stripes. So anyway, this is the story. So anyway, this is where it all changed. So we were in Philly, and we're here now in Toronto playing the Leafs. So we go for warm up, and of course, Mike knows where everyone's from, and obviously I'm from Toronto, so he knows I have a ton of people in stands and friends and this, that, and the other thing. So anyway, skating around, game starts, and I was on a regular shift in Philly at the time, and anyway, so game starts, I get no shifts, for the first 10 minutes. I said, okay, well, whatever. The whole period he sat me. So anyway, I'm sitting on the bench. My legs are seizing up. I go on the ice, loosen up there. Second period comes. Same thing. I have no ice time. He's benching me in front of my hometown, friends and fans, whatever else. Okay, fine. Well, in between the second and third period, I was stretching my legs on the Gatorade bottle, or the jug that we have our Gatorade in, just stretching, trying to keep loose. Keenan comes in and says, get your effing leg off that. I said, oh, is that right? Okay, mother, let's go. I take him outside and we go at it.
Wow.
Mike Keenan and I. And I'll tell you what, I was this close. And if it wasn't for Paul Holmgren, I would have knocked him on his arse. But what happened was Homer got in and got in between us because Keenan I had enough of him. I just, here I am. I'm completely pissed off that I'm not getting any ice time in Toronto, and he pulls this friggin' thing. So anyway, I walk in back in the locker room, and if you remember the old Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens, the visiting locker room was very, very tiny, very, 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 very small. Anyway, I walk into the locker room, and I say to the boys, it's been a pleasure because I'm guaranteed I'm done now. So anyway, I don't even do my skates up. I just put them just lightly, because I know that I'm done. So I go for warm up, wobbling out there. Anyway, I'm sitting on the bench and started the third period. He goes, Lolly, you're up. I started the game. He double shifted me the whole game.
Oh.
Oh my goodness. But that was Keenan's point. He broke you. And he did. And let me tell you something. I couldn't stand Mike Keenan when I first met him. I didn't like anything about him. He was an arrogant SOB. Well, let me tell you, when I got traded to Vancouver, he was the first guy. Bobby Clark called me to trade me, and the second guy was Mike Keenan. And to this day, he's a very good friend of mine. But it was a really cool story how it ended, because I didn't think that I'd ever get, out of Philly alive, especially, after threatening the coach, indirectly threatening the coach. But it was one of those things. And then, of course, Brian Burke now is in Vancouver, right? So he just got the job as, I think, player personnel. And so the story there is that I was we were playing in Vancouver that night. And I get a phone call from Bobby Clark, and he goes, Lawley, it's Clarky. I said, don't even tell me I've been traded. He goes, I've offered 5 guys ahead of you. Brian Burke wants you in Vancouver. I said, holy cow. So I literally switched locker rooms that night and played against the Flyers with the Canucks.
And what was that like?
That was great. I threatened everybody before the game. I said, you all keep your head up. And because I'm going to run every one of you. And they're all saying, hey, Lawley, go, what the hell are you talking about? I said, I've been traded. I'm going to play against you tonight. And we had a laugh. Anyway, I think it was -5 or 6 that night. Anyway, that was the end of the Philadelphia story, which I was really upset about. I didn't want to leave Philly because I knew that, after that Leaf game, I was starting to get Flyer eyes, and I was starting to be a part of it, and I really felt good. And then Berkey, my good buddy Brian Burke, said, I want Lawless. And I'm like, well, I guess he's, they offered 5 guys ahead of me. So he said, and I don't believe it, but anyway, and I went to Vancouver, and that was it. So, and it was a complete gong show in Vancouver. I mean, we had, once again, from my first year in Hartford, it was in my mind, a very similar hockey team. Great guys, bad, Pat Burns, Pat Quinn was there, and I love Pat Quinn. I love all those guys were good. We just didn't have a good hockey team. From Philly to Vancouver, I'm like, come on, really?
Yeah.
So, and KG, the coach, him and I didn't see eye to eye. Another coach I didn't get along with. Following the trend here, are you?
Yeah. So you spent some time in Vancouver, and next up came the Toronto Maple Leafs, your hometown team.
That's right. I was on a one-way contract. They sent me down to Milwaukee, and to play in the IHL, and I love Milwaukee. It was great. So, and then I got traded to the Leafs. The end of one season, the end of the one season, and anyway, it was something else. I mean, George Armstrong was the coach. They just made him coach, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Once again, I knew a lot of the guys, but I also, knew a lot about Ballard too, and I was the first-hand witness that they were all true. It was a friggin' gong show there, And I was like, boy, here I am playing for the Maple Leafs, grew up in Toronto, here's my team. I'm actually putting the jersey on. And I'm like, this is it. You got to be kidding me. And, you have a Yolanda running around, and you have Ballard running around. I mean, it was just a debacle. And anyway, so I played the end of the one season there, and then beginning of the other season. That's when Rob Ramage, they made Rammer the captain. And so we had an optional skate that one day. And the last time I checked it up, I went to the dictionary and looked up optional, which means you have a choice. You have an option to skate or an option not to skate. Well, I decided not to skate. Well, Floyd the Barber Smith, I think he was a GM at the time. It rings a bell to me anyway. He calls me up in his office and he goes, Lawley, you're going down to Newmarket. I said, I'm going down to Newmarket. What for? He goes, well, you missed the optional skate. I said, well, I'll tell you what, Smitty, why don't you look it up and you tell me what that means, right? So anyway, they sit me down to Newmarket, and Paul Gardner, who's one of my all-time greats, he's the coach. And anyway, so he goes, Lawley, I don't know what you're doing down here, but you're down here. So anyway, it was the third game, and I was sitting at a face-off circle, and just out of the blue, I'll never forget it. Basil McRae was sitting, we were lining up, and I said to Basil, I said, hey, Basil, I can't believe my career has come to this point where I'm on the ice at the same time you are during the game and not warm up. Because, Basil was a tough guy, and I was, not really, that wasn't my forte, right? So anyway, Basil left. Anyway, he falls. He did out of the blue. Someone blew a dart at him, and he just fell, and he splits me wide open across my face. Anyway, so I skated off the ice right there in the middle of the game. I walked behind the bench, and Guards is there, and he's looking at me. He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Guards, I'm out of here. I'm done." So I walked into the locker room. I took my gear off. The big whiteboard's there. I made a note. I said, "Hey, boys, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed playing hockey with you guys, and I'm out of here, Lolly." My next game was in Davos, Switzerland. And anyway, that was my my run there with and of course there's a lot more to it, but anyway, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I actually wanted to touch on your time over in Switzerland and your European tour. What was I like to play hockey over there?
Well, it was a paid vacation for me. Are you kidding? I had big ice. I was, I ended up in Davos, Switzerland, and didn't know a word of German. And all I could read on the menu was spaghetti carbonara. And, I think I put on 20 pounds. But it was great. It was a good experience. I knew I wasn't long in the tooth for Europe, but at the time it was, so much going on. And I just said, you know what? I want to try different things. And I figured, this is a good opportunity. I went there to Davos and I ended up in Lausanne, Switzerland, which is another great, I still have great friends there. So I played, I think a year and a half in Lausanne. Then I ended up in Graz, Austria. And then I came back to the Ottawa organization with the, and then they put me down in New Haven. And I said, no, I'm not staying in New Haven, Connecticut. Not a chance. Ended up in Cincinnati. Blaine Stoughton, who I met when I was 18 years old, and actually became a business partner of mine. But anyway, he was coaching in Cincinnati with the Cyclones in the IHL. And he said, "Lolly, why don't you come here?" So I got in the car. I drove from New Haven to Cincinnati, and that's where I played. And I loved every minute of it. It was the greatest experience. The NHL was great, but Cincinnati was really where I felt at home, So I was in Cincinnati for 5 years, and then I ended up, owning a hockey team in the WPHL. So anyway, yeah, it was great.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
We're going to get to things that are a little bit current. And I know this is a story in a situation that you feel strongly about. Let's talk about Joe Quenneville a little bit, sir.
Yeah. Well, Joel has, Joel was, first of all, he's a very good friend of mine. Him and Boo, we go back to obviously the Whaler days. And I remember when Joel, he was working for Legg Mason and, back in Hartford. And I remember when he got his first opportunity in where the heck was it? It was in Mass. I forget where the heck it was. Doesn't matter anyway. But anyway, he got the head coaching job there, and I said, you know what? Now he's in his wheelhouse, because Joel was one of those guys that everybody loved. Joel Quenneville, and he's a knowledgeable guy, And he was in Springfield. That was it, Springfield, where the Whalers had their. Remember the roof caved in Cincinnati. Yes. Joel was in Springfield. So I said, "Oh boy, what a great opportunity for Joel to be back in the game and everything else." Well, and obviously we'll fast forward to what has happened to him. But let me say, there's a great line. There's certain people that are an absolute asset to whatever they're in, and Joel Quenneville. And you can ask 99% of the people, maybe 99.9% of the people that have ever been with Joel, played for Joel, and personally or professionally, Joel Quenneville is an absolute professional. And there's no Hall of Fame without Joel Quenneville. And I tell you, I think that, I don't know Gary Bettman. I don't want to even get involved in what happened. All I know is that that's not Joel Quenneville. The NHL, I believe, is much better with Joel than without him. And he needs to be reinstated, because if you look at, you look at politics, you look at all kinds of different situations where people, at the time, were maybe caught up in the wrong situation. But come on, let's go here. I mean, Joel, very successful guy. Everybody loved him. He needs to be back in the game, some capacity, and I hope he feels the same way. And I hope Gary feels the same way. I mean, enough's enough. He's in other words, he's done his time. He's done his time. Let's go here, okay? Let's move on. Let's put it away. I understand it was a terrible situation, and like I said, I don't want to get involved in that. But the game of hockey, as we see it today, Joel Quenneville is a massive asset, and there's no Hockey Hall of Fame without him, in my opinion.
I agree 100%, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comments on Joel, Mr. Quenneville. Actually, my last question for you before we go today, just on the present playoff situation. Who are you liking? Well, maybe you can just give me an East finalist and a West finalist.
That's a good question. Let's go to the East. I mean, obviously, from what I've seen, and I'm not going to listen. Obviously, I want Toronto. You know what I mean? Yeah. But look at them. I mean, they're to win a Stanley Cup is a Monday to Sunday job. It's not a Monday to Friday job. And I think Leafs now are at a point where it's a squad that plays all week. And you know where I'm talking about, right? So with the playoffs, there's the first part of the season, there's a second part, and then there's the playoffs. And I think that Leafs have the power to go all the way. I really do. And, I don't even want to touch the West, but, right now I could care less about them. But anyway, but no, I mean, there's a lot of, and this, Ken, that you need every possible break known to mankind to win the Stanley Cup.
Definitely.
One cough up, one offside can be it's like any sport, really, isn't it? It's like golf. I mean, you lip out in the last hole and then you lose. I mean, it's just amazing what can happen. So, but I think that there's so much pressure with the Leafs. I think that the positive energy with the Maple Leafs now, that I believe, I think they're really going to do something. So I'm sticking with the Leafs. And by the way, that has nothing to do with me being here either. I haven't lived in Canada since I was probably 18 years old, if you know what I mean. Like, but I'm loyal to the Leafs, but because I was born and raised here. But I'm just answering the question. I think they can do it. I really do.
Awesome. Thank you. That really makes me feel good, Paul, that you picked the Leafs. Thank you very much.
Yeah, for sure.
And I want to thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an honor to have a former NHL hockey player of your knowledge. It's been a great interview. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
My name's Ken. I'm from Ken's Corner, and today I've been here with former NHL hockey player Paul Lawless. Have a great day, sir.
Thank you, Ken. All the best.
Thank you. And thank you for coming on today.